On the final day of the 2013 Missouri legislative session, a state representative quietly added an amendment to a bill that was already moving toward a vote. The amendment did not get a committee hearing. It did not get significant floor debate. It was added on the House floor during the final hours of the session, when legislators were exhausted, when attention was scattered across dozens of bills, moving simultaneously toward adjournment, when the kind of careful scrutiny that major policy changes require was the least available. The amendment changed Missouri law in one specific and consequential way. It eliminated the state's long-standing ban on foreign entities owning Missouri farmland, and it replaced that ban with a new provision allowing foreign ownership of up to 1% of the state's agricultural acreage. 1% of Missouri's 27.5 million acres of farmland is approximately 275,000 acres. That is not a small number. 2 weeks after the session ended, the largest acquisition of an American company by a Chinese company in history was announced. Hong Kong-based Shuanghui International Holdings, which has since renamed itself WH Group, was purchasing Smithfield Foods, the largest pork producer in the United States, in a $7 billion deal. Smithfield owned approximately 42,000 acres of Missouri farmland. Under the law that had been in place at the start of 2013, that transaction was illegal in Missouri. Under the law amended in the final hours of the legislative session, it was not. Subscribe right now, hit the button and the bell. The state representative who added the amendment was Casey Guernsey, a Republican from Bethany in northwest Missouri. Smithfield Foods was the largest employer in his district. Between 2010 and 2012, Smithfield had contributed $5,000 to his campaign. The amendment that Guernsey slipped into the bill on the House floor, that last day, no committee hearing, limited debate amendment, directly resolved the legal problem that Smithfield's pending sale to a Chinese company had with Missouri law. In February 2014, less than 5 months after he successfully led the veto override that put the law change into effect, Smithfield gave Guernsey another $5,000. That second contribution represented nearly half of his total campaign income for that period. Guernsey denied any connection between the legislation and the Smithfield deal. He said he did not know about the planned sale when he drafted the amendment, and he noted he had introduced a similar bill the previous year. He also said the last person Smithfield tells about their business decisions is Casey Guernsey. These are the facts he offered, and they are what was reported at the time. The public record contains both the timeline and the explanation for the timeline, and anyone can read it. What the public record also contains is the role of the Senate Agriculture Committee. The committee chairman who shepherded the measure through the Senate was Brian Munzlinger, a Republican from Williamstown, who was himself among the legislature's top recipients of Smithfield political money. The documented total Smithfield had given Munzlinger between 2011 and the vote was $31,000, more than 6 times what Guernsey received in the same period. Munzlinger, when later asked about concerns over foreign land ownership, described critics as alarmists and said the issue was overblown. The Senate Agriculture Committee passed the measure. Governor Jay Nixon vetoed it. His veto message stated that the amendment had been slipped into the bill without adequate debate. A change of this significance to Missouri's foundational law on foreign land ownership deserved more than a last-minute floor amendment in the final hours of the legislative session, added without a committee hearing by a representative whose largest employer was the direct beneficiary of the change. Nixon's veto was reasonable on the process grounds alone, regardless of how one feels about foreign land ownership as a policy matter. Guernsey led a successful override. The legislature voted to overrule the governor. The law change went into effect. The Smithfield sale closed. WH Group became the owner of 42,000 Missouri acres in 7 northern Missouri counties. The largest acquisition of an American company by a Chinese firm in history was completed, and the Missouri law that would have prevented it no longer existed because of an amendment added on the final day of a legislative session by a representative who had received $5,000 from the company whose buyer needed the change. Hit the like button. It tells the algorithm this story matters. That should have been the end of the story. It was not. In 2015, Missouri legislators returned to the foreign land ownership law and made it weaker. The 2013 amendment had at least required that foreign buyers apply directly to the State Director of Agriculture for approval of any acquisition. It was a minimal oversight mechanism that created a paper trail and gave the State Agriculture Department visibility into what was being purchased and by whom. The approval requirement was not aggressive enforcement. It was basic accountability, the state at least knowing what transactions were occurring before they completed. In 2015, legislators removed that approval requirement entirely. Foreign companies could now purchase Missouri farmland through the 1% window without state agricultural approval. That meant they could structure purchases through shell companies registered in Delaware or another state with minimal disclosure requirements, operate through domestic subsidiaries with no foreign addresses appearing in any record, and close transactions that added to the foreign-owned land total without the Missouri Department of Agriculture ever being notified. The Missouri Rural Crisis Center described what this produced in testimony before a legislative committee in language that deserved to be on a front page the day it was spoken. The quote was simple and direct. Nobody knows exactly how many acres have been sold. There is no tracking. There is no enforcement. Nobody knows. No tracking. No enforcement. That is the state of Missouri's knowledge about foreign land ownership within its own borders, as described by the people professionally responsible for monitoring it. Those three phrases are not hyperbole or advocacy. They are a factual description of the information vacuum created by the 2015 decision to remove the approval mechanism that the 2013 law had created. The federal government tracks foreign land ownership through a 1978 disclosure law, but that data is published years behind schedule and has documented reliability problems. When investigators compared federal foreign ownership disclosures to county property records in dozens of Missouri counties, they found that none of the farms registered with the federal government as foreign-owned appeared in county records with foreign addresses. The two systems that are supposed to tell the public who owns Missouri land do not match each other. Nobody has explained why. Nobody has fixed it. The Chinese-owned companies operating in Missouri right now include WH Group's Missouri Farmland, operating under the Murphy Brown of Missouri legal entity in 7 northern Missouri counties. They include the Missouri Walnut Company, registered to a business in China, operating in Berry County and Taney County in the Ozarks. Those are the ones that appear in federal disclosure records. The ones that do not appear, the ones operating through domestic subsidiaries, the ones structured to avoid disclosure thresholds, the ones that exist in the gap between what federal law requires and what counties actually record, are unknown in number and extent because the people responsible for knowing that number chose in 2015 to eliminate the mechanism that would have tracked it. The same legislators who voted to remove that tracking mechanism were operating in a political environment shaped by campaign contributions from the companies that most directly benefited from reduced oversight. That is not an allegation. It is a documented relationship in public campaign finance records available to anyone who looks. Missouri's foreign land ownership law has been amended multiple times since 2013. Each amendment has faced significant political opposition from the farm community, bipartisan co-sponsors, and agricultural advocates who have described the situation in consistent terms. We do not know what we have allowed. We cannot track what is happening, and the mechanism we dismantled in 2015 was the last systematic tool we had for finding out. Every bill introduced to restore meaningful oversight and reporting requirements has been met with lobbying opposition from business groups, real estate industry associations, and pork producers who have financial relationships with the companies the oversight would affect. The governor of Missouri in 2024 signed an executive order restricting foreign adversary nations from purchasing land within 10 miles of military facilities. That order was described as proactive and protective. What it does not address is the 42,000 acres already owned, the unknown quantity of additional foreign-connected land acquired through the 2015 loopholes, or the tracking gap that has made it impossible for the state to know its own land ownership picture with confidence. What happened in the final hours of the 2013 Missouri legislative session was not complicated. A state representative amended a bill in a way that directly benefited a company that was his largest employer and among his largest campaign contributors. The amendment removed a decades-old protection against foreign land ownership in Missouri. The change was timed, whether by coincidence or by design. The public record allows anyone who reads it to make that judgment. It took effect before the largest Chinese acquisition of an American company in history closed. The governor vetoed it. The legislature overrode him. 2 years later, legislators weakened the law further and eliminated the tracking mechanism. The result, as described by the people who track these things professionally, is that nobody knows exactly how many acres of Missouri land are foreign-owned. There is no tracking. There is no enforcement. That is what Missouri politicians approved while nobody was watching. And it is still in effect today. Subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell. Drop a comment. Did you know this is how the law change in 2013 happened? The details are in the public record. They have been there for over a decade. Most Missourians have never seen them. Thank you for watching. The truth doesn't shout, it waits for you to look closer.